The grand dining hall of the luxurious Silverwood Hotel was alive with the chatter of wealthy patrons. At the center of the opulent space stood an ebony grand piano, glimmering under the chandelier's warm light. It was rarely touched, more a symbol of wealth than a source of music. At one of the corner tables, a sharply dressed man leaned back in his chair, sipping an aged cognac. Jonathan Harker, a prominent real estate mogul known as much for his wealth as his arrogance, surveyed the room with disdain. His piercing eyes landed on a young waitress clearing a nearby table, a black woman no older than her mid-20s. "Hey you!" Jonathan's voice boomed, cutting through the hum of conversation. The waitress froze for a moment before turning. Her name tag read Naomi, and her eyes betrayed a mixture of nerves and defiance. "Yes, sir?" she asked, keeping her tone polite but firm. "You've been sneaking glances at that piano all evening," Jonathan said, smirking. "What's the matter? Dreaming above your station?" The room grew quieter as conversations paused to watch the interaction. Naomi flushed but stood her ground. "I wasn't sneaking glances, sir. I was just admiring it." Jonathan chuckled, a cruel edge to his laugh. "Oh, admiring it, were you? Do you even know how to play? Or are you just fantasizing about what you can't have?" A few patrons chuckled nervously, unsure whether to side with Jonathan or the waitress. Naomi's hands tightened around the tray she was holding, but she kept her composure. "I do know how to play, sir." Jonathan raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Is that so? Well then, prove it. Play something for us." Naomi hesitated, glancing around the room. She could feel the weight of dozens of eyes on her. "I'm here to serve food, not entertain guests." Jonathan leaned forward, his smirk widening. "Are you refusing? Come on, give us all a little show. Unless, of course, you're lying about knowing how to play." The humiliation was thick in the air, but Naomi took a deep breath. Her grandmother had always taught her to never back down from a challenge, especially one meant to belittle her. "Fine," she said, setting down her tray. "If that's what you want." The room buzzed with murmurs as Naomi walked to the piano. She sat on the polished bench, her fingers hovering over the keys. Taking another deep breath, she began to play. The first notes were soft, tentative, but they quickly grew into a melody so rich and haunting that the room fell silent. Naomi's fingers danced across the keys with effortless precision, weaving a tapestry of emotion. It was a piece she had composed herself, filled with the struggles and triumphs of her life. Jonathan's smirk faded, replaced by disbelief. He leaned forward, unable to look away. The patrons who had been laughing moments earlier now sat in stunned silence, their gazes fixed on the young waitress transforming the room with her music. As the final note hung in the air, there was a beat of absolute silence before the room erupted into applause. Naomi stood, her expression calm but her heart racing. Jonathan, however, was not one to be outdone. He clapped slowly, sarcastically. Well, you have a talent. I'll give you that," he said, standing. "But tell me, what good is talent if you're stuck here waiting tables?" The comment stung, but Naomi met his gaze. "Talent isn't something you measure by wealth or status. It's something you carry with you, no matter where you are." The room fell quiet again, and for a moment, it seemed like Jonathan had no response. Then a sly smile spread across his face. "Interesting perspective. But let's see how far it gets you." Without another word, he tossed a $100 bill onto the piano and walked away, his entourage following. But the story didn't end there. Naomi's performance had left a mark on everyone in the room, including a middle-aged woman sitting near the back. As Naomi returned to her work, the woman approached her. "That was incredible," she said warmly. "Do you play professionally?" Naomi shook her head. "I used to dream about it, but life had other plans." The woman smiled. "Dreams have a funny way of coming back to us. My name's Eleanor Pierce. I'm a concert pianist, and I'd love to help you take that talent further." The offer stunned Naomi. She had no idea who Eleanor was, but the sincerity in her eyes was undeniable. Over the next weeks, Naomi found herself juggling her job and piano lessons with Eleanor. Her life began to transform as her talent gained recognition in small circles. But Jonathan Harker hadn't forgotten the humiliation he felt that night. One evening, as Naomi prepared for her first public performance at a local theater, she received an unexpected visitor. "Jonathan Harker?" she said, staring at him in disbelief as he stood in the theater's backstage hallway. "Surprised to see me?" he asked, his smirk as sharp as ever. "I came to see if you've got what it takes when the stakes are high." The tension between them crackled as Naomi squared her shoulders. "You can stay and watch, but I'm not here to prove anything to you." As Naomi took the stage, Jonathan sat in the audience, arms crossed. But as her performance began, his expression shifted. This wasn't just skill, this was brilliance. By the end of the performance, even Jonathan was on his feet, clapping. For once, he had nothing to say. Naomi had left him, and everyone else, speechless. And in that moment, Naomi realized she didn't need Jonathan's approval, or anyone else's. Her talent spoke for itself, louder than any words ever could. Naomi's performance at the theater marked a turning point in her life. The audience erupted in thunderous applause, and as she bowed, the reality of the moment began to sink in. Her music had finally reached beyond the walls of the Silverwood Hotel. Among the crowd, Eleanor Pierce watched with pride, but her eyes weren't the only ones fixed on Naomi. Backstage, Naomi was approached by a man dressed in a sleek suit with a leather-bound notebook in hand. "Naomi, that was extraordinary," he began, extending his hand. "I'm Victor Langston, a talent agent. Have you ever considered a professional career in music?" Naomi hesitated. The idea of stepping into the spotlight felt daunting, but Eleanor nudged her gently from behind. "This is your moment, Naomi. Don't let fear hold you back." Victor explained that he was connected to an international music competition held in Paris, a competition that could catapult Naomi's career to new heights. But, he added, "It's not an easy journey. The competition is cutthroat, and you'd be up against some of the best in the world." Naomi's heart raced. She thought of her late grandmother, who had always encouraged her to pursue her dreams, no matter the odds. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steady. The weeks that followed were grueling. Naomi practiced tirelessly under Eleanor's guidance, honing her skills and perfecting her compositions. But as the competition approached, a shadow loomed in the background: Jonathan Harker. Unbeknownst to Naomi, Jonathan had connections to the competition's board of directors. The memory of being outshined by a waitress still burned in his mind, and he wasn't about to let her rise without a fight. At a private dinner with the competition organizers, Jonathan leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine. "This Naomi Carter, I hear she's a wildcard entry. Are we sure she belongs in such an esteemed event?" One of the directors frowned. "Her talent speaks for itself, Jonathan. We don't exclude people based on their background." Jonathan's smile was cold. "Of course not. But we wouldn't want her story to overshadow the other competitors, would we? After all, this isn't a charity event." In Paris, Naomi arrived at the competition's venue, a stunning concert hall with ornate carvings and velvet seats. The air was thick with tension as contestants from around the world prepared for their performances. Naomi felt the weight of their stares, some curious, others dismissive. As she warmed up backstage, she overheard whispers. "Isn't she the one from that viral video? A waitress playing at this level? Ridiculous." Naomi pushed the comments aside, focusing on the keys beneath her fingers. But just as she was about to step on stage, an official approached her with a clipboard. "Miss Carter, there's been a change. You'll be performing last instead of third." The delay wasn't ideal, but Naomi nodded. She didn't realize that Jonathan had pulled strings to position her at the end of the night, hoping the audience would be too fatigued to appreciate her performance. As the night unfolded, the competition was fierce. One by one, contestants dazzled the audience with their performances. Naomi watched from the wings, her nerves growing with each passing moment. By the time it was her turn, the hall was eerily quiet, and some audience members had already begun to leave. But as Naomi sat at the piano, she closed her eyes and let the music flow. She didn't play for the judges or the audience. She played for her grandmother, for Eleanor, and for herself. The melody was unlike anything the audience had heard, a fusion of classical technique and modern storytelling. When she finished, the silence was deafening. Then, a single clap broke through, followed by another and another. Soon, the entire hall was on its feet, cheering louder than they had all night. Jonathan, sitting in the back row, clenched his fists. His plan had failed. After the competition, Naomi was swarmed by reporters and admirers. Among them was a young girl who tugged at her sleeve. "Miss Naomi, your music was beautiful. Can I learn to play like you?" Naomi knelt to the girl's level, her heart swelling. "You can do anything you set your mind to. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." But just as Naomi began to feel a sense of triumph, she was handed a note. It was from Jonathan. "This isn't over." Naomi's journey was far from finished. Jonathan's influence threatened to derail her newfound success, and the world of professional music revealed itself to be a maze of challenges and betrayals. Yet, with each obstacle, Naomi's resolve only grew stronger. She had faced humiliation, prejudice, and sabotage, but she had also discovered her strength, her talent, and her voice. And as her story continued to unfold, one thing became clear. Naomi Carter was destined to play not just for an audience but for history itself. Naomi knew Jonathan's veiled threat was not to be taken lightly. She had seen what his power and influence could do, but instead of feeling fear, she felt a surge of determination. She wasn't going to let him or anyone else control her narrative. The next morning, Naomi met with Victor Langston, her agent, and Eleanor. She shared the note Jonathan had sent, and Victor's face darkened. Jonathan has deep pockets and connections, but his reputation in the music industry is hanging by a thread. If he tries anything, we'll expose him. Eleanor chimed in, her voice firm. Naomi, your talent has already silenced doubters. Focus on that. Let him scheme. We'll be ready. A week later, Naomi received an invitation to perform at a prestigious gala in Vienna, attended by some of the most influential figures in the music world. It was an opportunity that could solidify her position as a rising star. However, rumors swirled that Jonathan had connections to the event organizers. Victor insisted Naomi take the opportunity. The best way to defeat someone like Jonathan is to shine so brightly that his shadow doesn't matter. At the gala, Naomi stepped into the grand ballroom, her gown shimmering under the chandeliers. The air was thick with anticipation. Jonathan was there, seated among the VIPs, his eyes cold as he watched her take the stage. As Naomi played, the room seemed to disappear. Her music transported the audience to another world, weaving stories of struggle, hope, and triumph. Her final piece, a composition she'd written herself, was dedicated to her grandmother. It was hauntingly beautiful, leaving the audience in awe. When she finished, the applause was overwhelming. Even Jonathan couldn't mask his begrudging admiration. But as Naomi returned backstage, she found herself cornered by him. You may have won their hearts tonight, Jonathan sneered, but this world isn't kind to people like you. It's built to break you. Naomi met his gaze, unflinching. You're right. This world isn't kind. But people like you don't scare me anymore. You'll spend your life trying to tear others down, and I'll spend mine building something real. The following day, headlines celebrated Naomi's performance, calling her the future of classical music. Meanwhile, whispers about Jonathan's unethical behavior began to spread. Naomi had unknowingly inspired others to speak out against him, and soon, his influence began to crumble. Naomi's career soared. She signed with a top record label, performed in sold-out concert halls, and even collaborated with other trailblazing artists. But she never forgot where she came from. Years later, she returned to the Silverwood Hotel, not as a waitress, but as a guest of honor. She funded a music program for underprivileged children, ensuring that others like her could find their voice through music. As she sat at the same piano where it all began, Naomi played a familiar tune, smiling as the room filled with applause. Her journey had been long and fraught with challenges, but she had turned every trial into triumph. Naomi Carter wasn't just a musician. She was a symbol of resilience, talent, and the power of standing tall in the face of adversity. Thank you for watching Naomi's inspiring journey. What part of her story resonated with you the most? Do you think her resilience and talent would have shined through without the challenges she faced? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the story and want to see more captivating tales like this, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support means the world to us.